This case centers around Kyle Rittenhouse's interaction with those three men, two of whom he shot and killed. Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber both died, as you saw there. The other man is Gaige Grosskreutz. Rittenhouse shot Gaige one time in the arm. He was the only one of the three men to survive. He also took the stand as a witness for the prosecution in this case. His attorney, Kimberly Motley, is joining us tonight as we wait for the verdict. Kimberly, I know you just left court, and so that's why you're in your vehicle tonight. We appreciate you joining us. The decision now up to the jury, self-defense or murder. You say Kyle Rittenhouse never showed remorse for any of the victims in this case, including your client. What does justice look like for Gaige?
Well, thank you for having me. I think justice looks like for Gaige, and as well as the estate of Joseph Rosenbaum, who I also represent, that he is found guilty in all 5 counts that he created. He created the situation. He created the violence that was, part of the carnage that he started and ended in Kenosha. And he should be held accountable for his actions and found guilty on all 5 counts.
Do you believe that the prosecution have proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt?
I absolutely do. I think today was really a pivotal moment for the prosecution. I thought their closing argument was very strong. I mean, part of the issue is that, Kyle Rittenhouse, he drove to Kenosha. He doesn't have a legal driver's license. His gun wasn't legal, wasn't registered to him. It was a straw purchase through his friend Dominic. He created all the provocation. He provoked people on that night. And, he used his weapon as a way to bolster up his bravado. He, as the prosecution said, he pretended to be an EMT worker and lied and said he was certified, which he was not. He pretended to be a firefighter, and he felt like he was sort of also self-deputized as a police officer that night. And so, he had a little bit of liquid courage, I think, because of having this weapon. And I really hope that the jurors look at all the evidence and look at his actions and understand that, he did not have a right to self-defense. You cannot start a fire and then put it out and act as though, you're not the reason why the fire was lit in the first place. I think that's the problem with Rittenhouse's defense.
Kimberly, your client was in Kenosha that night with a gun as well, correct?
That's correct.
What was his defense for being there and reason?
Well, he was there. He was working as an EMT, and actually he testified to him actually performing some EMT services to people on both sides that were protesting, on behalf of Jacob Blake and those that were the counter protesters. And so he actually testified to that. There was video evidence that was shown of that. And so that's why he was there. As my client has testified, he is a strong believer in the Second Amendment right, and he has a gun because that is his legal right to have that gun. There are some, sort of inferences made about his gun being unlawful. He had a registered gun. It was registered in his name. The registration had lapsed by a few months. So it wasn't like he bought it from a friend, as Rittenhouse did, but he actually purchased the gun legally, had it licensed, but that license had lapsed for a couple of months.
The other point of contention, it appeared, in terms of your client testifying, was whether or not he pointed his gun at Kyle Rittenhouse that night. It seems as though he backpedaled once he came on national television after he testified. So did he or did he not point his gun at Rittenhouse?
Well, I mean, I think what the issue is that as he did testify, I would actually disagree with him backpedaling that once he got on national TV, that he never pointed his gun with the intent to shoot Rittenhouse. And I think that's clear because he did not shoot Rittenhouse. As the prosecutors said in their closing statements today, that my client was shot in the arm. And after he was shot in the arm, yes, he may have pointed this gun at Rittenhouse, but it certainly wasn't intentional. He thought he almost died, and he was tending to his injury.
Before I let you go, what do you make of the judge, Kimberly, presiding over this case? You have said that his conduct is biased. There have been a lot of back and forth between he and the prosecution, him criticizing the prosecution. Do you think that he'll have an impact on this jury and their decision ultimately?
Well, I think what I've said is that I haven't agreed with all the judges' decisions, certainly. And I do think that, the judge is in charge of this, essentially, and he is a referee to this, in the trial. And so I do think some of his decisions and some of his behavior, it can impact the juries. And so I have been very concerned about some of his behavior in front of the jury. I think it's inappropriate, for instance, for him to be yelling at any lawyers in front of the juries to prejudice them. And so I think I have a problem with that as a professional, because I think it's completely inappropriate. But at the end of the day, he is the judge, and we have to respect his role.
Kimberly Motley, attorney representing Gaige Grosskreutz. We appreciate your time tonight as we wait for this verdict. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.